about getting a grip on it, man. Yelling your responsibility. Never cleaned the bathroom this morning, man. Yeah, you should remember next time. Yo, cause it's off the wall.
Started stabbing myself in my stomach.
Yo, I guess you clean out the showers too. Yo, every one of them uses the shower.
Because I wanted my father to, come and say, it's okay, Diana, you're gonna be all right. You're a very sick little girl. I just wanted him to know that he loved me, because I felt like he didn't. I felt like nobody did.
How often were you spanked?
Every day for a long time.
And I'm in a pod, which is each tile is like a foot by one, all right? So I got 9. That was me. That was me for 9 fucking months. That's my pen. That's where I live.
At Elan, the first thing they learn is you're not going to get out of here. If you burn the place down, we'll sleep in a tent together. No matter how many times you run away, we will go and get you. Why? Because we have a commitment, all right, to you and to ourselves.
Hello everyone, my name is Hailey Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I do videos pertaining to a little bit of whatever I want, and now that includes this new series on my channel called Down the Rabbit Hole, where essentially I look into internet phenomenons and I become so intrigued and deeply invested by this one topic I'm researching that I research it until about 4 a.m. until my eyes physically cannot stay open anymore. So then I go to sleep and then I wake up and the thoughts are still screaming in my head and I have no outlet. So usually I use my friends, but they're kind of getting tired of it, so I thought I would choose you guys as my new outlet for all of these thoughts. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Elan School for Troubled Teens. I found this topic out a couple days ago when I was just scrolling through old Reddit posts, and I came across this Reddit post by the name of Jesus My Hero, titled, "Even skimming this post once will blow your mind. Most probably think that it's made up, but you would be dead wrong." It basically just goes into detail about the author of this post saying that he went to a school called Elan School for Troubled Teens, and this whole school basically disguises itself as a school for troubled teens, people with substance abuse issues, people that come from abusive households, and even people with learning disabilities. Everyone goes to this school, and from the website makes the school look a lot more warming and welcoming, and that the staff truly do care about the students. But in reality, when this author had entered into the school, he was confronted with the harsh reality that this school was not indeed a school. His school days consisted of little to no school, only 3 to 4 hours of school every single day, and even with the education that they got, the teachers weren't even certified teachers. The only certification that they had was that they had graduated from Elan previously, and the whole 12 hours of their day would be just dedicated to labor, whether that be cleaning, cooking, monitoring, and if you were caught not following directions, whether that be with your job or your education, you would get aggressively abused and tortured. There are a lot of cases where the students were beaten, tortured, humiliated by the students and the staff. And the staff, instead of calling this abuse or punishment, they would call it learning experiences. But I don't really understand how putting a child into the corner of a room and making him stare at that corner all day, every single day, sleep there, eat there, go to the bathroom there for an entire 6 months, every single day is considered a learning experience. And I also don't understand how back in 1992, Elan School had actually killed a 15-year-old boy named Philip. They eventually beat him to death until he had a brain aneurysm and eventually passed away. Don't really see how that's considered a learning experience either. So I started looking into it and I found out that even after killing a 15-year-old boy, you would think that this place would be shut down or investigated, but no, this place remained open all the way from 1970 to quite recently when it was forcibly shut down by this Reddit post. As I was starting to read into all of this, I kept on thinking, even after killing a young kid, how did this place remain open for so long? And how did it take Reddit in order for it to shut down? So after reading all of that, I had a lot more questions than answers, and that's when I decided to start at the way beginning and from there slowly fall down the rabbit hole.
And now a word from our sponsors.
The summertime is among us, and whether you decide to job hunt or relax, make sure you do it with Grammarly. Grammarly is an all-in-one writing tool that not just offers vocabulary corrections, but also offers better word suggestions to make your job application or your academic essay feel more professional. Grammarly makes your stressful days a little bit easier, whether you are personal journaling, writing an essay, an email to your boss. Grammarly is completely free to use and already works on platforms that you use anyway, such as Google Docs, Gmail, Microsoft Word. And if you're feeling crazy, you can also upgrade to Grammarly Premium and access all of their amazing features, such as conciseness suggestions to make you feel more confident in your writing. It's easy to fall into a run-on sentence, and this premium tool helps you get your writing clear and to the point. With all of this new free time on our hands since it's summertime, it's very easy to get distracted, but Grammarly has your back because they have this feature, setting goal feature, and it helps you ensure that you're writing to the right audience, whether it's business or academic, alongside with their free tone detector to ensure your tone is coming across the way you want it to be. I've honestly been using Grammarly since high school. I remember in high school I had to take AP English. Grammarly really helped me make my high school essays sound like college essays. I remember this one time in particular, I needed my teacher to write me a letter of recommendation, and then when he showed me his computer to see like what he had written down so far, noticed that in the corner he had Grammarly, and I pointed at it and I was like, "You use Grammarly?" And he was like, "Oh my god, yeah, it literally like helps me so much." And I was like, "I use Grammarly too." So don't you think that Grammarly is just for students or you have to be in school to use it? You can use it pretty much anywhere. Go out and enjoy your summer and get your work done quickly with the help of Grammarly. And it's free, so why not? Go to grammarly.com/haileyelizabeth to sign up for a free account, and if you want to get extra features, you can upgrade to Grammarly Premium for 20% off to help you save time and work more efficiently. Again, that is grammarly.com/haileyelizabeth. 1970s, the era of bell-bottoms, discos, and troubled teen programs, aka how they put it back in the day, behavior modification facilities. This was the origin of the Scared Straight program in order to deter juvenile crime. There were many different teen troubled programs such as Daytop, Cyanon, Phoenix House, and so many more, but what these programs did have in common was the way that they advertised themselves. All of these teen troubled programs advertised themselves to be, it wasn't just a school or a rehab, it was a community where all of these teens got together and they were put on the right path for sobriety, or if they needed help in school, they would be guaranteed college after they entered this facility or a nice paying job. There was actually a study and a quote found on motherjones.com where it reads, "There's little evidence that harsh behavior modification techniques can actually solve problems. Studies found that it could produce long-lasting psychological harm that only 10 to 15% who participate in them recover fully." So back in the 1970s, when all of these teenagers were going through their typical teenager phase, you know, you have all of these hormones in you, everything is brand new to you, you're sad and you want to cry, but then you're happy and you want to laugh, and then you're mad and you want to rebel and talk back, and there's just so much going on through a teenager's life, and through this, a lot of teenagers express that differently. Some teenagers express that through drugs, alcohol, crime, others express it through being sad all the time, some express it through overindulging themselves in schoolwork, but back in the day, parents weren't really educated on how to help their child or put them into the right direction, and so since this was the 70s and everything was considered taboo, parents didn't want to label their kids as a criminal and send them to jail, but they also didn't want to label their kid as mentally ill and send them to a mental hospital. And so a nice in-between of jail and a mental hospital were these teen troubled programs, such as Elan School. Back in 1970, a Harvard psychologist by the name of Gerald Davidson and his equally psychotic best friend Joe Ritchie founded Elan 1, located in Sebago, Maine. Elan 1 was an 18 and older program that basically helped people with substance abuse issues. Joe Ritchie, the co-founder, was actually a substance abuser himself. He attended Daytop for many years and then later worked at Daytop after recovering from his addiction to heroin. And then shortly after he started working at Daytop, he decided to become a mentor, and that is when he joined up with Gerald Davidson to take on Elan. And that is when he decided that he doesn't want to just do Elan 1, he wants to expand his horizons. He feels like he could take on more people. Him and Gerald decided to open up another Elan called the Elan School, located in Poland, Maine. Elan School was not for 18 or older, but mostly teenagers and pre-teenagers, all ranging from ages 12 to 18 during the 1970s, but later there would be no age limits. There were people who were 23 attending these things for any type of issues that they had, whether that be problems with alcohol, drugs, or even just needing help with school. A lot of people who had mental disabilities or learning disabilities would also attend Elan. And Elan was, in the words of Joe Ritchie, a last resort for parents whose children struggled with behavior and psychological problems. Their parents bring them here to succeed when everything else has failed. The school sat on a whopping 32 acres away from any sort of civilization, and the cost to go to Elan was around $50,000 each year. So a lot of the kids that went here were troubled teens, but they were also from middle to high class. Kids here would typically stay for an average of 2.5 years, although there were many students who stayed there as long as 6 years. A lot of the children that attended Elan just came from really broken and abusive households and had nowhere else to turn and didn't really know how to cope with their problems.
Pretty wasted one night, and I went out and I got a butcher knife and, started stabbing myself in my stomach, which partly because I wanted my father to, come and say, it's okay, Diana, you're going to be all right. You're a very sick little girl. We'll take you to the hospital and, sew you up. And I just wanted him to know that he loved me because I felt like he didn't. I felt like nobody did.
Advertisements for Elan, they said that 95% of the kids that attend Elan graduate Elan on track to go to college, get a good paying job, or are completely sober and off of the streets. The Elan's website also included a lot of 5-star testimonies from lots of students that have graduated Elan. On their website, they say that the day's agenda starts with a nice shower and some breakfast, and all over the website you're seeing very pretty pictures of the Elan School, talking about how this is a fun community where all of the teens get together and they learn what it's like to be in a community of people who are just like them and deal and struggle with the same things as them. The website says that all of the kids engage in very fun activities to improve their social skills, such as canoeing on a beautiful lake, horseback riding, tending to the horses, biking with friends, playing tennis with the friends, as well as group and one-on-one therapies available at Elan School. So if the child is having a tough time, trying to get sober or just trying to learn how to cope with their problems in a healthy way, there is guidance on site for you. Just try to create an environment where kids leave Elan School looking forward to the future instead of just living day by day the same. So from the Elan School website, this place looked like a heaven to any sort of kid or any sort of parent. Elan School more just looked like a summer camp than it did an actual school. So parents seeing this for the very first time, they were very excited to send their kids here because they thought that if they sent their kids here, they were going to engage in fun activities, they were going to make new friends, they were going to get sober, and they are being handled by professionals who have degrees and credentials in all of these things that they might not have credentials in, and to help their kids get back on track. And from the looks of the website as well, the staff sort of explain themselves as if they are all about the kids. They extremely care about purely the kids. They will do everything in their power to help your child get back on track. Looking at this website, the parents automatically assume that this is a fun summer camp with education on top of it. I mean, $50,000 a year. They're probably going to get a lot of the best therapy by trained professionals. They were going to get their education. They were going to learn social skills. It was basically like putting your dirty kid into the washer and having it come out all squeaky clean. In the first year of Elan's grand opening, there was over 100 kids already enrolled into Elan. Their websites and advertisement tended to target very lonely and worn out parents that, are trying to find help for their teens. And a direct quote found from the home page of the Elan school website reads, "Dear parents, we are very aware of how lonely and confused you must feel as you sit down to read this. If you are like the parents of most of our children, you are faced with an adolescent whose behavior is out of control and you don't know why. A youngster who has been given everything and is throwing it away is difficult to understand, but you can see that this process is progressive. The most saddening part is knowing that your offspring is ruining his or her future. Your own pain is difficult, but your pain for your child is unbearable. By coming to Elan, you have come to a truly different school. We cannot offer you miracles, but we can offer you hope. We know that your journey to this point has been painful. We hope Elan can change its course." Sharon Terry, Executive Director, Elan School. As you can tell from that, nothing about that was super informative. So I'm editing this video and I don't know why I didn't see this earlier. The entire note, they literally just blamed the children. Your child is ungrateful. And we know it's hard to understand that they're just ruining their life and throwing it away when you've obviously given them everything. Not even like really considering that maybe they're not doing drugs and alcohol for fun. Maybe they're doing it because they're trying to numb some pain that they're suppressing. Maybe they've had a traumatic life and don't know how to open up to people about it, and their only release is to break the law, do drugs, alcohol. Maybe if you put it in a way of like, we're going to help your child become a better version of themselves. We're going to help your child become a better person emotionally, physically, mentally. We care about your child and their feelings, and we have professional help that can help you. But no, they literally just called the child ungrateful and that it's their problem. I mean, that right there can probably tell you how inconsiderate this place is. It's basically just trying to dig into a parent's mind emotionally so that they would be more inclined to send their kids to Elan. And all of the kids that attended Elan were mostly either substance abusers through drugs or alcohol, or were severely psychologically scarred from their abusive households. Or a combination of both. A lot of people came from very abusive households and were psychologically scarred and didn't know how else to cope except for drugs and alcohol.
Taken away from my mother when I was 13. My mother had issues with alcoholism and she married an extremely abusive man.
My mother was physically abusive, emotionally abusive.
My mother used to tie me to a radiator and beat the shit out of me.
My dad, from when I was as early as I can remember, he was physically abusive, mentally abusive, sexually abusive, and no one knew about it. My mother didn't know.
I've seen a lot of kids come through the program who had some horrible relationships with family members.
All of the kids that attended Elan were in desperate need of love and attention, and they just needed someone to actually listen to them. These kids weren't doing drugs or alcohol because they enjoyed it. They were trying to numb some sort of pain, and there should have been some sort of staff member or trained professional to see these kids not as, traumatized kids or disasters. They should have seen these kids as opportunities to love them and listen to them and show them what an adult role model is supposed to look like, because they have no adult role models at home. That's what these kids truly needed, and that is what Elan says they were going to offer. And these kids needed to learn how to not numb their pain, but feel their pain and start to heal from from their pain, because no matter how long you try to numb the pain for, once the numbing is gone, the pain will always be there. Numbing your pain is only temporary, but if you stop numbing your pain and feel your pain, you can start to heal your pain, so it will be gone forever and you won't ever need a reason to numb it anymore. And that was the staff's responsibility. That's what they were supposed to do. The enrolled kids at Elan were typically woken up in the middle of the night by 4 older adults and taken away from their household and directly put on a bus or a train or a plane to head off to Elan. Very similar to Dr. Phil's ranch approach, and we all know how well that one turned out. On the way to Elan, the parents and the child are both given very pretty pictures and good reviews and amazing testimonies about how the following next few years for their child is going to look. And although they are in the middle of nowhere and they can only call you a couple times a week, we assure you that your child is safe with us. Basically, to just ease the parents' tension, you drove up a dirt road across about 12 acres, and then when you actually get to Elan, you are greeted with these 3 houses labeled Elan 3, Elan 8, and Elan 7. Once you actually arrive at the main quarters of Elan, you are given exactly 6 minutes to say goodbye to your parents, and if you were to say anything disrespectful to your parent, you would be punished immediately once you got inside. Then after your 6 minutes are up, you are departed from your parents. Once your parents leave, you walk into the main Elan school area. You will be confronted with what your life will consist of every single day for the next 2.5 years to 6 years. Immediately when you walk into Elan, you are faced with so many people screaming, fighting, punching, and amongst all of these things, the people screaming and fighting and punching and people wearing humiliating signs, humiliating costumes, and also people being forced to do humiliating things in front of a bunch of people. The most eerie part about all of this is that the kids surrounding all of this seemed very nonchalant about all of the occurrences, as if this is just an everyday thing. After taken through the main area, you are immediately sent to these showers to be stripped of all of your clothes, all of your belongings, take a shower in front of someone to prove that you are not trying to sneak anything in. And as I said earlier, during this time, the kids ranged from 12 to 18 years old. Now, as written down in the paper that you are given prior to going to Elan, they say that you are assigned to a chaperone, but on paper, this chaperone is supposed to just kind of show you around, be your mentor, your guide, your sidekick in a way, but in reality, this chaperone was your boss, essentially. This chaperone would actually manipulate a lot of the kids. As I said, these kids would come in very broken and vulnerable states, and after seeing all of that, the first thing you want to do is try to get out of there. So these chaperones would actually act as a way to make students break the rules. So they would manipulate them and taunt them, trying to get them to break the rules so that they could punish them. Within the school, there were also 2 social statuses. There were strengths and non-strengths. Non-strengths were people that have just entered Elan, people that don't really have a job to do, and if it is a job, it is very low on the bar. As for strengths, strengths are people who have been there for years and years. They have earned the trust by the staff to be promoted to new levels, such as being a chaperone. In Elan school, these chaperones actually weren't called chaperones, they were called big brothers. Strengths were also essentially the people that would snitch on everyone. Anytime someone stepped a little bit out of line, the strengths would immediately report it to the staff. And so after you are given a big brother figure, you are then given a job. And everyone in this behavior modification facility had a role. There was the service crew. Service crew was in charge of all of the cleaning. The kitchen crew was in charge of all of the cooking. The business crew was in charge of all of the offices. Basically, they handled all of the paperwork, all of the applications, all of the financial records, literally just did all of the jobs that the adults were supposed to be doing. They also handled most of the phone calls as well. There was the communications crew. The communications crew job was was to bring news from the outside world, because as I said, these kids were not allowed to go on the internet, so they would have a communications crew that would have privileges to read the newspaper and go on the internet. These people, their job was to basically keep everyone on the inside informed what was going on the outside, kind of similar to prison if you think about it. There was also the expediters. The expediters walked around with a clipboard with everyone's name on it, and every time someone walked a little bit out of line, that expediter would then make a little check mark next to the name, and that person would get punished later on. They also worked as night owls, where during the night they would stay up all night monitoring the halls to make sure no one ran away at night. There were also expediters inside of the woods surrounding the Elan school. There were many of them hidden in there, so if someone were to try to escape, they couldn't because they would be caught by one of the people out there. As you can see, there is literally no way to get out of here. Once you are in Elan, you are in Elan. There is no way for you to get out. There is no person you can talk to. There is nothing you can do but sit there, do your job, and try to get out. And although this type of work does sound very like regular work, it definitely was not regular work. It was very vigorous work. You had to work for 12 hours a day straight with little food to eat. A lot of the kids that attended here would eventually starve. There was also a lot of kids there that weren't allowed to take bathroom breaks, and if you asked to take a bathroom break, your bathroom break had to be approved by 6 different superiors before you're even given a 3-minute bathroom break. So a lot of the kids there, to prevent needing to go to the bathroom, they just wouldn't drink anything either, leaving these kids extremely malnourished. None of the kids were also allowed to calling your parents. That was a thing that was only available to the strengths as well. So some kids would go months and months without talking to their parents. All they would receive was updates from the staff that would obviously be fake, saying that their kid is doing extremely well, they are excelling, they are sober, and they love Elan. And say you finally become a strength and you're finally granted the privilege to talk on the phone with your parents, you don't even get to say whatever you want to your parents because all calls are heavily monitored by someone who is standing right next to you as you're making the phone call to your parents on speakerphone, as well as all of the calls being recorded. There were, of course, a lot of kids that would try to tell their parents what was going on, but immediately those calls were cut off, and once they were cut off, that student had to suffer punishment. And at this behavior modification facility, everyone there looked up to Mr. Joe Ritchie. Joe Ritchie was the guy that enforced a lot of the punishments and the rules. He was sort of the ringleader to the entire operation, and everyone really looked up to Joe for his approval because he was superior than everyone. They knew that if they got Joe Ritchie's approval, they were able to leave. Joe was very money driven, and you can tell that he was very money driven because he would not go anywhere without his minx coat, which cost thousands and thousands of dollars. He also owned a Rolls Royce and had tons of money, and also he would award his favorite children with different things like clothes and goodies. And just that mentality right there is a very toxic mentality to have. You're basically teaching children that although I am terrible to you, you still have to love me because without my approval, you're not getting out of here. I know throughout this video, I've talked a lot about these punishments and therapies. I talked a lot about it, but I never really went in depth on it. So now I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on what exactly these learning experiences were, as well as the therapies they would provide at the school.
About getting a grip on it, man. Yelling your responsibility. Never clean the bathroom this morning, man. Yeah, you should remember next time. Yo, because it's off the wall. Yo, I guess you clean out the showers, too. Yo, every one of them uses the showers.
So in order to get a punishment or a learning experience at Elan is very easy. They practically target you for anything that you do or don't do. Sometimes they would target people who have never made a single mistake just because they feel like they're hiding something, or that they have made a mistake but they just haven't caught it yet. So they would even target the people that genuinely would do everything perfect. Some of the things that you would get punished for, but are not limited to: if a non-strength was caught talking to a fellow non-strength, if you told a strength about your struggles of living at Elan, if you tried to run away, contact the outside world without permission or privilege from a superior or strength, showering longer than 3 minutes, reading, acting suspicious, looking at security zones, looked out windows, talked too loud, talked too soft, talked too little or too much, listened to music, smile, laugh, and so many more. An Elan alumni actually spoke up and said, quote, "Smiling without permission can lead to a session of cleaning urinals with a toothbrush, and that can last for hours." One of the most popular ones was called general meeting. When you were given a general meeting, essentially someone would scream out the words general meeting, and when that person would yell, 150 people would get in front of you, the singular person, and all at the same time, all 150 of those people would scream at you.
You don't even have enough self-esteem, okay? You don't make sure things get done. So I suggest the next time you should put more quality on it.
A lot of the people would scream at you, calling you names, calling you slurs, telling you things like, quote, "You're worthless, you're disgusting, and no one loves you." These general meetings would go on anywhere from 10 minutes to an entire hour.
Staff or the director who was running it would say, "Okay, get your feelings off."
And you would commence to basically cursing each other out one at a time at the top of your fucking lungs.
Get goddamn back yesterday. Motherfucker. That's what a fucking guy, you goddamn pussy. But you told me like, you're a motherfucking chick. Swear for the guy, you throw bitch. Goddamn high pressure fucking cheap back there. You will respect me. No motherfucker just do that. Oh, pussy ass bitch. But if we go, we'll go back to cheap. Go motherfucker. Go return that position. You fucking suck.
And all while this is going on, the staff are just watching all of the students. If you, the person receiving the general meeting, were to say things like, "Please stop, I can't take this," or if you were to have a panic attack, the staff would go a step further and allow everyone to get close into your face and start screaming at you, not from a distance, but from extremely close. Scream at your face. They would spit on you. No matter how much you sat there and cried and yelled for it to all stop, or for people to stop yelling, stop shouting, there's nothing that you could do that could make it stop. And the only way that the general meeting would stop is if a staff member said so. There were also a couple instances where Joe Ritchie would allow physical abuse to the students during these general meetings, depending on how angry he was with the students. The reasoning for your general meetings does not just have to be because you refused authority or that you got in trouble. Sometimes if you were to tell a secret to someone, maybe a staff member or a therapist, they would later use your trauma against you and host general meetings because of it. This actually happened to one girl that attended Elan. She said that she opened up to one of the staff members about how she had to receive an abortion, and this abortion was used against her in a general meeting. And there was actually another Elan alumni who said that she actually received a general meeting every single day for a whole 3 years. This one story of this girl who was caught holding hands with a guy for 5 seconds when the power went out, and that girl then had to wear a sign that said, quote, "Please ask me why I am a whore." Plus, on top of that, had a general meeting with everyone calling her names, calling her all of those degrading names. I'm not going to say them, but you know, insanely degrading names because she held hands with a guy for 5 seconds when the power went out. And what made this situation even worse for the girl is that when she was being called all of these disgusting, degrading names, and she had to wear that humiliating sign. No one had known because she was too scared to tell anyone. She had been S8 since she was 4 years old. So hearing everybody calling her all those disgusting names and having to wear that disgusting sign just made her trauma even worse and made her feel extremely terrible about herself. Another learning experience you would receive at Elan were these things called pods.
And I'm in a pod, which is each tile is like a foot by one, all right? So I got 9. That was me. That was me for 9 fucking months. That's my pen. That's where I live. It's taped. Taped, outlined. If I went out of it, Chief!
Actually, one instance where a child had been forced into a pod that was located in the corner of the room, and he sat there in that pod looking at the corner of the room for an entire 6 months. Another punishment that they would make you do is wear signs. If you were to open up to a therapist about your trauma that was going on at home, all of the abuse that you have endured, all of your regrets and things that you have done, they would later use all of your therapy sessions against you to humiliate you in front of everyone. When you were given the punishment of a sign, you're the one who had to write it out. And once you wrote it out, it had to be approved by a superior. And if it wasn't degrading enough, they would keep making you remake it until they essentially just made you feel terrible about yourself. One of the signs in particular, for example, said, quote, "My name is Phyllis Cohen. I behave like an emotional cripple. I constantly seek people's attention and try to get them to prove they care about me. I play games and continually usurp people's emotions in order to make myself feel special. Please confront me because if I don't change this attitude, I will always be the scared and lonely person I am now." Another punishment was called guilt. Have to write down on a piece of paper every single bad thing that you have ever done in your life, every bad thing that you feel guilty about. And as this exercise, it was disguised as a release. They said that if you write down all of your feelings, you're going to feel better about it. But in reality, they would use these papers against you in order to punish you later on. A lot of people would write down personal info and deep desires and dreams that they had. There was this one story where this girl wrote down that she had dreams of becoming an actress. Afterwards, she received a 45-minute general meeting where everybody screamed at her saying that she wasn't creative, she wasn't talented, that she is dumb, she is stupid, she will never succeed in acting. There was also another punishment that was called costumes, where it is essentially just how it sounds. You would have to wear humiliating costumes. There was one girl that went to Elan, and she had written in one of her guilt letters that she was diagnosed with syphilis. It's a sexually transmitted disease, and later after, she was forced to walk around with ketchup-dipped tampons all over her head as a crown. There were a lot of kids that opened up about their abusive household and how they had been abused since they were kids, and after hearing this information, they were forced to wear costumes such as diapers over their clothes and walk around with rattles and binkies. There were some women who even opened up about their sexual assault and rape stories to certain therapists. Those women were later forced to wear costumes, extremely short, tight dresses, high heels, and poorly done makeup. One alumni said that one time he had suggested they get a dog. That kid who suggested they get a dog was later forced into a dog costume and had to walk on all fours, was given only dog food to eat. He had to bark, acted completely like a dog for months. There was another person who attempted at escaping Elan, and when he was caught, he was handcuffed and forced into a pink rabbit suit that he had to wear for, again, months. There was also spanking punishments. There was this one woman by the name of Kim Freehill. They gave her a general meeting. She was so overwhelmed and having a panic attack clearly that she ended up losing control and peeing herself. They threw her into a cold shower with all of her clothes on, and then they brought her back into the room and continued their general meeting. She said that in this moment she was still experiencing her panic attack, so she started to uncontrollably cry and shake. The staff would get their clipboards and spank Kim for hours and hours until she stopped shaking and crying.
We also use spanking, which is symbolic. Again, it's a last resort, okay? And it's one resident spanking another resident, and it's done with a ping pong paddle, okay? And usually a person won't get spanked more than once or twice. But it's a symbolic thing, which is if you're going to act like a baby, you should be treated like a baby.
Well, when they spanked me, I mean, they didn't have to spank me, so I turned black and blue. Simple as that. I mean, that was just one time after another. I was so sore I couldn't sit down. Now, to me, that's a little ridiculous.
How often were you spanked?
Every day for a long time.
Hard?
Oh, yeah. Clipboards. Hands. Anything, you know. Something that they could, well, I would feel it, supposedly. They thought I needed it because I supposedly was a terribly big baby.
There was also another punishment called the ring, where essentially 10 to 15 people circle around one person, and that one person, you, would be titled the bully, and the 10 to 15 people would have to, quote, fight for the house and justice, and they would beat the person one by one with boxing gloves on, while other kids outside of the ring screamed at the one person, calling them names, calling them vulgar slurs. Not only is this person in the ring getting physically abused one by 10 to 15 people, they're also getting verbally abused by everyone surrounding the ring. Some kids in the ring would come out of the ring with broken bones, such as broken noses, arms, ribs, legs. There were some people that would come out with bruises and bloody noses. Some would even come out with concussions because of this, until eventually in 1992, one specific kid went into the ring and unfortunately never made it out. On December 27th of 1992, a 15-year-old boy by the name of Philip Williams was entered into the ring as his punishment. And the reason why Philip had went to Elan in the first place is because he grew up in a very abusive household. He used to be forced into watching his father beat his mother. He had no idea how to cope with it or how to better himself, so his mother had sent him to Elan in hopes of healing Philip. One day, Philip was given the ring as a punishment due to faking headaches. But once he was entered into the ring, he was beat so badly to the point where he fell to the ground in the middle of the fight and he started to shake uncontrollably, and people assumed that he was faking a seizure, like he faked his headaches, and so even when he was shaking on the ground, they continued to beat him. It wasn't until 20 minutes later the staff stepped in and realized that there was something wrong, and so they immediately called an ambulance. Ambulance showed up, took Philip away, and he was eventually taken to the hospital, where later that night he had passed away due to a brain aneurysm. The sister of Philip said, quote, "I thought it was a wonderful place. I thought they were helping my brother. I thought he was coming home. He came home all right. In a box." So because of this, you would think that if they had killed a 15-year-old boy due to their punishments or learning experiences, that this school would clearly be looked into, investigated. You would think someone would question why he went to the hospital with bruises and broken bones and died of a brain aneurysm, but no. Not a single person batted an eye, and Elan didn't receive a single repercussion. They didn't receive a single charge, nor did they even shut down for not even a day after this had happened. And since this was during the 90s and the internet was not as popular as it is now, when things like this happened, Joe Ritchie could easily pay certain news outlets to not talk about it, and that would be that. And so even though this happened, people continue to send their kids to Elan because there was no way for them to find out that this happened.
In the jargon of Elan, this is a haircut. The theory is that blowing the most trivial incidents out of proportion with angry shouting will lead the supposed offender to take a closer look at himself.
So now that you know some of the incredibly terrifying punishments that would go on at this school, let me explain to you the therapies and schooling. Similar to their different types of punishments, there was also different types of therapy, such as attack therapy. Attack therapy was a time to let your feelings out on someone at the top of your lungs while that person just has to sit there and take it.
Everybody went around and 99 and 9/10% of the people in this room told you in so many words they think you suck as a person, that you give nothing, and that if they had their way, they'd cut your throat, put you out of your misery, and relieve the human race of having to deal with an ingrate like you.
They were essentially taught to deal with their feelings and stresses through violence and anger. Another type of therapy that they would perform was primal scream therapy. Primal scream therapy is where you basically just scream as loud as you can at everyone, and this is done with the intention to release tension. Basically, by screaming, you are letting out all of your anger, all of your problems, and you will feel so light and ready afterwards. And weirdly enough, those were the only two types of therapy I found. Nowhere did I find any real therapy, anyone who was certified to be a therapist, because as I said in the way beginning, the only certification that these people had, the staff, was that they graduated from Elan. And that was it. They were not licensed therapists. They were not able to administer any medicine to these children. They basically just took their trauma and used it against them as a form of punishment and abuse. Also, I should have said this earlier, but I just now remembered. I was reading an article where it said that if you were not actively participating in any of these things, such as general meetings, attack therapy, primal scream therapy, if you were not actively participating in any of those things, you yourself will get punished for it. So a lot of these kids that participated in things like general meetings and screamed all these vulgar things and went over the top and said disgusting things, they weren't saying it because they meant it. They were saying it because they were scared and they wanted to leave. Even now, a lot of the Elan alumni say that, you know, I'm sorry to anyone that I hurt. I'm sorry to anyone that I had physically hurt, verbally hurt. I'm sorry for the things that I said. I was just so brainwashed and my only goal was to get out of there. And I didn't really care as a 14-year-old kid who I had to hurt in order to get out of there. So with that being all of the therapies that they had, as far as the education, surprisingly, the education was just as worse as everything else. None of these teachers really had real education in education. Again, their only credentials were that they graduated Elan. When it came to school time, it went from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. All they did was do some random worksheets and read out of a textbook. And there were never at any point any projects. There were no tests. There were no quizzes. There was no real lessons. It was just, here's a textbook, read from it, and that's your education. There was one Elan member in particular that had went to Elan when he was a 12-year-old boy and ended up not getting out till he was 18 years old. And after graduating Elan, he went to go and pursue college, but when he got to college, he didn't even know how to read because no one in Elan had taught him how to read. That right there just tells you how terrible the education at Elan was. It wouldn't even be considered a school because there was no school school. After an entire day of working for 12 hours straight and being screamed at during general meetings and being punched and beaten in the ring, any person at any age would be extremely tired and you would just want to go to sleep. But there were a lot of people that said that during these school hours, if you were to even close your eyes for too long, you would get punished first thing in the morning the very next day. Joe Ritchie actually said in an interview one time that the reason why the classes ran so late is because kids are, quote, easier to control when sleep deprived. So it seemed like with that, in some capacity, Joe was very self-aware of what he was doing to these kids, yet he just didn't care. After school was out at 11 p.m., lights out was at 11:30. That is unless you were a night owl. Night owl's job was to monitor the bunks to ensure that nobody escaped at night. There were bunk beds in these rooms, so it was probably 6 to 8 kids per one room, and further sleep depriving all of these kids, because not only did they just work a 12-hour shift, they also had to sit through a 4-hour class, and now they have to stay up all night long monitoring the halls. Again, if you were to fall asleep, a lot of the strengths who just wanted to get out of there, they would snitch on you immediately. Once you fell asleep at 11:30, you were expected to wake up the very next morning at 7 a.m. and essentially just start this whole day over. Everything that I just told you, the primal scream therapy, the attack therapy, the general meetings, the pods, the costumes, the signs, living a actual nightmare every single day. Over the years that Elan was open for, there were only 3 people who had successfully escaped Elan. One of them was an anonymous 16-year-old who was found by a police officer, and after the police officer had heard the 16-year-old boy's story as well as taking a look at his physical appearance, he was sent home. But after this, he made a statement to the police, yet the police did absolutely nothing about it. The police never went to Elan to confirm this boy's story. The police never investigated Elan. They never shut down Elan. They never spoke to any of the other students in private. They did absolutely nothing but just bring the boy home. The second person to successfully escape Elan was Brad Glickman. He ran into the woods and was able to escape all of the monitors that were out there. He came across a house in a small neighborhood, and some reports actually say that he had a connection to the girl that lived at this house, like it was his friend's house. So when he knocked on the door, he was confronted with the father, and the boy was saying, "Please, you need to help me. There's a school down the road and they're abusing us and I just need to call the police." As the boy was pleading with this man, the man didn't see the boy as a need for help. The man just saw the boy as an intruder. And so right then and there, the man had pulled out his rifle and shot the boy dead. Third person to have successfully escaped Elan was a girl by the name of Dawn Burnham. She left Elan through the woods and was able to make it past all of the monitors and found a trucker driving on the road named James Cruz. She explained the story to the truck driver and said, "You need to get me out of here. You need to drive me home." And so the trucker agreed to take her back home. But unfortunately, the trucker had other plans and did not take Dawn home, but instead pulled over on the side of the highway where he continuously SA'd her. And then after SAing her on the side of the road, he took a yellow rope and strangled her to death. Her body was found by a motorcyclist and was somehow able to track the body of Dawn to the semi-truck driver, James Cruz. And so once they were able to identify that this girl was Dawn, they looked at her physical state and realized that she was very, very malnourished. She was very badly beaten. She had a lot of signs of physical abuse, a lot more than could just be created in one night with James Cruz. So that is when they started to look into Elan and think, hey, this girl just went to Elan. Pennsylvania Police Department was actually one of the very first people to start looking into Elan and realizing that something was starting to go on. But because of this story happened again in the 80s, 90s, where internet was not very popular. Although the police were looking into Elan, Joe Ritchie had paid off so many journalists with his millions of dollars to prevent anyone from hearing what had happened.
Misconduct, but the fact that the same thing takes place all the time legally in the private placements we've just heard about. Like the private prison business, this industry is about making money by locking up children. It is not about helping them. The treatment they sell is abuse.
I want people to take responsibility for what they did.
Those of you who don't know me, I'm Skylar. I graduated Elan in 2001. I was there from 1999, March of 99 to April 2001.
I don't care that they didn't throw the punches. They were adults. Adults are supposed to take care of children.
When I was at Elan, I got a real story to tell you about Elan.
So over the course of the 80s and 90s, minor changes had been made to Elan, but not really any big ones. Social services was constantly in battles with Elan, arguing fights over violations of life safety codes, plumbing codes, eating regulations. There was a man by the name of Michael Skakel that had actually confessed to a murder he had done to 15-year-old Martha Moxley. Kids at Elan said that Michael would frequently brag about this occurrence and say things like, "Of course I'm gonna get away with it, I'm a Kennedy," and he's referring to himself being Robert F. Kennedy's nephew. They knew that Michael had tons and tons of money, to where if he was caught, he would probably get away with it due to his amount of money, and even worse, all these kids had to just sit there and listen to Michael's murder story, and they couldn't do a single thing about it because they had no access to the outside world. Even the staff didn't want to say anything in fear that it'll make their school look bad, and if, you know, the nephew of a Kennedy got caught up in murder, it would definitely point more towards Elan than they wanted to, so instead they just remained quiet. But it wasn't until the year of 2000, 27 years later, where Michael was actually starting to get charged with the murder of 15-year-old Martha Moxley. So when he was arrested and charged with this was a really big deal because, as I said, he was the nephew of a Kennedy, and so this was making huge headlines at the time. With Michael attending Elan before, he had a lot of his alumni from Elan friends come up and try to defend him at his trial, but instead, these Elan alumni took the stand to express their concerns about Elan because, as I said, this was a huge case. They knew that this was going to get a lot of coverage, a lot of people were going to listen to them, and this was their only opportunity to actually speak about the dangers that was going on at Elan and warn other parents in the future not to send their kids there. Even if it was removed from the trial, at least some people had heard it. And so it wasn't until the NYPD actually stood up and said, "Hey, what did you just say?" Like, this school had been open since 1970 and it's currently 2000, and decades of abuse and torture and trauma to so many young kids have been going on here, and yet nobody has said anything. No one has tried to shut them down. Nobody has tried to argue with the school. And so the NYPD had opened up an investigation on Elan and found many of the crimes that Elan had committed quite quickly after opening up the investigation. This was very frustrating to police and also to me as well, because it was just so odd that as soon as the NYPD opens up a case about Elan, they immediately find so much evidence, so many crimes that Elan has committed over decades, yet Maine, the state of Maine, has had this investigation open, yet found completely nothing. None of this would have happened if they had just done their job and looked just a little bit into it. One of Maine's really big issues is that when they were trying, they were barely trying, but when they did try to look into Elan, they would always post about it in the papers before investigating into Elan. So they would say things like, oh, the Maine Police Department is thinking about going over to Elan and investigating it, or they're planning an investigation on Elan. And so that would give Elan time to clean everything up, get their story straight. So by the time the Maine Police Department does go there, the Maine Police Department can leave and be like, you know what, we went there, everything was clean, everything was fine, and all is good. But in reality, nothing was good because the Elan school had time to prepare for their arrival instead of just randomly showing up and catching them dead in the act. In that year of 2000, the NYPD had showed up randomly to Elan, no warning, nothing, just dead in the act. Although the NYPD had found all of this evidence, all of these clear signs of abuse, unfortunately, Joe Ritchie was not able to serve any consequences for his actions because on January 29th of 2001, Joe Ritchie had passed away due to lung cancer. Well, after he passed away, that is when his second wife by the name of Sharon took over Elan. Per request of the NYPD, Sharon took out all of the humiliation tactics as well as the costumes, the spankings, and removed the ring. That part to me was so frustrating because it's like, yeah, you're taking out the spanking and the humiliation and the costumes, but why are you still open? Don't you guys remember how just a while ago someone attempted at going to college after going to Elan and they didn't know how to read? Like, that is not, it's not even a school. Like, it's literally just a place to legally abuse children and take their money in the process. And yet they still remained open for another 11 years. In the year 2010, about 9 years after the Michael Skakel trial, there was a Redditor by the name of G-Zaz, my hero, that attended Elan back in the 90s and took to Reddit to talk about his experience at the school. Now, prior to him writing on Reddit, he had actually had an entire website and blog dedicated to him trying to shut down Elan. And so when he found Reddit, he realized that maybe he could, try to find a bigger audience. Maybe a lot more people will listen on Reddit rather than his blog. He made his post in 2010 and titled it, "Even skimming this post once will blow your mind. Most probably think it's made up, but you would be dead wrong." He posted this on Reddit thinking that not that many people were going to listen to him. Maybe it'll get like a couple reposts, but that was it. But after this post was uploaded, it received hundreds and hundreds of replies and upvotes, and it completely blew up to the point where people were also talking about Elan. People were doing their own investigations into Elan. With the age of the internet, when word spread fast. And not only did word spread fast, the people demanded change. Sharon's taken over, but she does not have the capabilities to shut every single person on the internet down from talking about it. Thousands and thousands of people were speaking upon this case. A lot of people did investigative work and found a bunch of old NYPD reports about Elan and people getting infuriated that it wasn't shut down right then and there. A lot of alumni from Elan also came forward to talk about their experiences and their stories. There's no reason why a place like that should exist. It's inhumane. It's stripping away basic human rights. People were fighting for Elan to be shut down. Over the course of an entire year up until 2011, people did not let it down. It wasn't the type of thing where it got a lot of traction at one point and then it slowly started to die down. People were furious and it just kept going up, and it went all the way until the point of March 23rd, 2011, where Sharon had posted, quote, The school has been the target of harsh and false attacks spread over the internet with the avowed purpose for the school to close. The school, unfortunately, has been unable to survive the damage. They also said that there were a lot of financial issues, which is crazy to me considering, again, it costs $50,000 a year to go there. Like, some people don't even make $50,000 a year. So she mostly blamed it on money issues and that not that many people were enrolling in Elan, and that's why they were shutting down, plus the backlash online. Elan School was to be shut down on April 1st. Some alumni from the Elan School say that it is unfair to say that absolutely no one gained anything from this school, because there are a couple of students that were pointed towards the right direction. A lot of kids with substance abuses that went in here and then they got out completely sober. So it would be unfair to say that no one benefited from this school, but it is fair to say that this school definitely hurt a lot more than it helped. After the fact, people started looking into the Elan School. There was a statistic that came out shortly after the shutdown that said when investigated, they found that out of 117 students, 70 of those students were arrested, and one of them was serving a life sentence currently for murder. On April 1st of 2011, that is when Elan had shut down for good. A lot of the kids that left Elan left completely broken. Some of them were substance abusers, and when they left, they resorted to substances even more. There were some kids who went in with just a learning disability and came out suicidal. A lot of kids unfortunately did commit suicide after all of this. As far as Michael, he was actually arrested, but he was later released back in 2013 after posting a $1.2 million bond. So he is currently free and walking the streets. The school is actually abandoned to this day. There are a lot of YouTube videos of people looking around the abandoned area. Of course, there's graffiti and everywhere over it. And a lot of the alumni still to this day are speaking about their stories at Elan, and especially trying to connect with other people that went to Elan. There's a really amazing documentary about it as well. I feel like the staff here is really all to blame about how Elan had went, and I feel like if these kids were given proper treatment from people who truly cared about them, they would have turned out a lot better than they have. But you know, what's done is done. You can't change the past. A lot of the kids now are currently healing from this traumatic situation, and that's really all you can do when you experience something like that for years and years. It's a very scary situation, and I can't even begin to imagine the horror that went on there, and just living every single day in that place and just feeling like it's one big nightmare, but then you wake up the next morning and you're still in that place. It's undescribable, and I could never understand what that truly was like. But I really hope that everyone in this situation is currently healing from their situations. I hope that they're doing better. I hope that they're finding peace. They're finding a path that benefits them the most. And yeah, and that is all for today's video. If you guys found this video interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to follow me on any of my socials, like my Instagram, that will be linked down below, as well as my P.O. box if you want to send me anything. And as well, the amazing documentary that I referenced a lot throughout this video will also be linked down below. I highly recommend you watch it because it's a really amazing documentary. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your morning, day, or evening whenever you're watching this, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.